There was a time when money was real. It was heavy, shiny, and finite, a symbol of something tangible, something the earth itself had to give up. But one day, gold died. Not with a bang, not with an explosion, but with a quiet signature, one that changed the destiny of nations. Since that day, the world hasn't been ruled by kings or presidents, but by something far more powerful. The unseen architects of modern finance, the money gods. Beat. What happens when the thing we trust most, our money, is no longer backed by anything real? And if every dollar, yen, and euro is born from debt, who exactly do we owe? For thousands of years, gold wasn't just a metal. It was civilization's anchor, the universal language of trust. From Egyptian pharaohs to Roman emperors, from Ming Dynasty merchants to Renaissance bankers, gold represented something sacred, value that couldn't be faked. You couldn't print gold. You couldn't promise it into existence. You had to find it, mine it, refine it, and earn it. By the 19th century, nearly every major economy had adopted what came to be known as the gold standard. A simple but powerful idea. Every piece of paper money could be redeemed for a fixed amount of gold. This kept governments honest. It meant if they wanted to spend more, they had to earn more, just like everyone else. But honesty, in politics and finance, has a short shelf life. As global trade expanded, carrying gold became impractical. So banks began issuing paper notes, receipts for gold held in their vaults. These promises made transactions easier. People stopped trading gold itself and started trading the paper that represented it. But over time, something subtle began to happen. Banks realized that not everyone would come to redeem their gold at the same time. So they started issuing more receipts than there was gold. It was the birth of fractional reserve banking, the first quiet rebellion against reality. The system worked until panic hit. Whenever too many people demanded their gold at once, the illusion collapsed. And each time it did, the world learned the same lesson. Paper money only works as long as people believe it. Real. Newsreel sounds, 1914. War drums fade in. Then came World War I, a conflict so vast it shattered the old financial order. Nations needed money, a lot of it. So they did the unthinkable. They abandoned gold. To fund war, governments printed paper, borrowed from their central banks, and created money that no longer represented anything real. By the time the war ended, the world's currencies were in chaos. Inflation soared, fortunes vanished, empires collapsed. The gold standard limped on in pieces, revived in the 1920s, but it was never the same. Then came the Great Depression. Banks failed. Confidence died, and desperate nations once again printed their way out of pain, at the cost of the truth behind their money. In 1933, something historic happened. President Franklin D. Roosevelt made it illegal for Americans to own gold. Citizens were forced to turn in their gold coins to the government in exchange for paper dollars. It was the ultimate betrayal. The people's gold taken away in the name of economic stability. Gold, the foundation of trust, had been confiscated, and paper became the new god. After World War II, the world needed a new financial system. In 1944, at a quiet resort in New Hampshire, leaders from 44 nations gathered to build it. It was called the Bretton Woods Agreement, and it crowned a new king, the US dollar. Here's how it worked. Every currency in the world would be tied to the dollar, and the dollar itself would be tied to gold at $35 an ounce. America promised that any foreign government could exchange their dollars for real gold whenever they wanted. For a while, it worked beautifully. The world trusted the dollar, and the US became the global banker. But behind the scenes, something was changing. America was printing more dollars than it had gold to back. It was fighting expensive wars, funding global projects, and expanding credit, all while promising gold it didn't really have. Other nations started to notice. By the late 1960s, countries like France began sending ships to New York, demanding gold in exchange for their paper dollars, and that's when the illusion began to crack. Archival footage, 1971, President Nixon speaking on TV, music darkens. August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon appears on national television. He calmly announces that the U.S. will temporarily suspend the dollar's convertibility to gold. The world didn't realize it yet, but that moment ended a 5,000-year chapter of human history. The gold standard was dead. Money was now backed by nothing except faith. From that day on, dollars were no longer promises to pay gold. They were simply promises. And faith, as history shows, is the easiest currency to manipulate. Digital sounds fade in, screens, markets, numbers scrolling. Once gold was gone, the financial system was unleashed. Governments discovered they could create money out of thin air. Central banks realized they could control entire economies with interest rates and credit supply. And global debt exploded. In 1971, total U.S. debt was under $400 billion. Today, it's over $35 trillion. The world's total debt now exceeds $300 trillion, more than 3 times the global economy. How? Because every time money is created, so is debt. In this new world, money doesn't represent value. It is debt. When banks issue loans, they don't move existing money around. They create it with a few keystrokes. Every dollar you spend is someone else's debt, and every dollar you owe keeps the system alive. The money gods don't live in temples. They live in algorithms, in interest rates, in policies decided behind closed doors at central banks. And their power comes from one thing: the belief that money is real. Poverty, billionaires, and stock charts. When gold died, restraint died with it. Governments could now print their way out of crisis, and they did. The result? Booms and busts, housing bubbles, market crashes, currency collapses. Every solution created a new problem. In 2008, the system nearly collapsed. Banks that had created money out of nothing almost destroyed themselves with the same trick. The response? Even more money printing. Trillions in stimulus flooded the markets. Stocks soared. The rich became richer than ever. Meanwhile, wages stagnated. Prices rose, and ordinary people fell deeper into debt. In 2020, during the pandemic, the world printed over $20 trillion in new money in just 2 years. The result? The illusion expanded, and inflation returned like a ghost from the past. The money gods had one answer to every crisis: create more money. And every time they did, the real value of what you own quietly shrank. The system didn't fix itself, it just learned how to disguise collapse as recovery. Electronic tones, visuals of crypto coins, central bank meetings, and digital ledgers. Now, as we enter the digital age, the money gods are preparing for their next transformation. Cryptocurrencies promise to bring power back to the people, to create a new form of digital gold. But governments have their own plan. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. These aren't decentralized. They're programmable. Every transaction can be tracked, every account controlled, every coin turned on or off. It's the ultimate evolution of money and control. When money becomes data, freedom becomes conditional. And when every transaction is visible, privacy becomes a luxury. The same story repeats. Each new system begins with promises of freedom and ends with greater control. So, what can we learn from the death of gold? 3 lessons stand out. First, money without limits leads to power without accountability. Once gold was removed, there was no natural restraint, only human greed. Second, every financial empire eventually betrays the trust it was built on. From Rome's silver denarius to America's dollar, every currency that abandoned real value eventually collapsed. Third, the system doesn't fail suddenly. It erodes slowly. People adapt to inflation, to debt, to digital tracking, until one day, freedom itself becomes a memory. When gold died, money stopped being real. And when money stops being real, so does value, work, and even morality. Today, we trade time, labor, and dreams for digital numbers that can vanish with a policy change. We measure success in currency that no longer represents anything real. And the greatest illusion of all? That this system can last forever. Pause. But history whispers a warning. Every empire built on debt eventually faces the bill. When that day comes, when faith fades and numbers lose meaning, only those who understand how the game is played will survive it. If you found this story eye-opening, share it, not just for curiosity, but for awareness. Because understanding how money truly works isn't just financial literacy. It's self-defense in a world run by invisible empires. Fade out on slow zoom of a dollar bill turning back into gold dust.